Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Okay, thank you first of all for your kind comments in the last video. Yes, I'm looking forward to this project too. I truly am. It's a bit personal, this one. I've wanted to do this for a very long time in a project, and it's only I've managed to find the right donor bike for it at the right time for me that this can now take place. Anyway, without chatting on about it, this top end is coming off today. Rockers off, heads off, barrels, pistons out, and we'll have a look what it all looks like, lay it all out on the bench, and then I'll know what I've got to work with and what it's like down inside. And as long as that's good, then I can go to the dealership tomorrow and have a look what options are available to me within the budget that I've got to see what sort of top end I can put back on it afterwards. And also we're going to be looking at the cams as well, because standard cams on a big top end, well, that's a waste of an opportunity, isn't it? Anyway, that's all in the future. None of it's going to happen till I can strip it. So let's strip it. First of all the peripheral furniture out of the way. Engine mounts, horn, carburetor, inlet manifold, all the stuff that's in the way so I can actually get to the engine. All right, first little challenge. There's a stud on the front of the front cylinder head that holds it to the engine mount. The nut is seized to the stud and the stud's coming out, but the stud is too long to come out before it hits the frame. So I've got to leave that there, and when the cylinder head comes off, I'll remove it and sort it out all afterwards. Ever challenges. Right, now I'm going to do the inlet manifold. These are a little bit tricky because 4 screws hold them into the 2 cylinder heads and there's not a lot of access. The rear screws though, quite luckily, they're only on a fork, not on a hole. So you actually only need to loosen them and then get around the other side, take the other 2 out, and you pull the inlet manifold out from that side, from the brake side of the engine. So you just need to crack these. It actually helps to get into these if you've got an Allen key and you just cut 10mm off it. So if you've got a spare one, get in your grinder, slice it down by 10mm and it goes in there really nicely. But an ordinary one goes in there, it's just a bit more of a faff. Right, okay, that's got all the foliage out of the way. Now it's time to open the engine. And it starts with remove the rocker covers. They come in two halves. You've got the cover itself and then a spacer ring underneath it. They're both held on with 4 screws. And out of all 8 screws, 7 of them come out no problem at all. But one of them on that side at the back is just slightly under the frame. So that's a bit of a challenge, but they all come out in the end okay. And the front one just lifts off. But the rear one, that's a little bit more challenging because it's so close to the frame. You have to rotate it and slide it out sideways. Bit of a puzzle. We can do it. Jiggle, jiggle. Right, so turn the engine over, top gear's best, and watch the 2 rockers or the cups on top of the push rods, and they need to be at their lowest point. That means the rocker the other side is its highest point and the valve is closed. Now as you turn it over, you can see they move and you can watch them find the lowest point. Right, once rotated so that both those fingers are at their lowest point, that means the push rods have retracted all the way down and there should be no weight on them at all. So reach in and see if they turn. If you can turn the push rods, that means there's no weight on the rocker assembly at all, which means when you unbolt it in sequence, it will come off nice and square and not get buckled by the weight of a valve spring. And obviously you can only do one head at a time because at the moment on the front head, the valve for the inlet is still open. So I'll have to rotate again and reset it for the front to do that separately. So do them one at a time. Rear one first, spin the push rods, check. Now let's unbolt it. Spin, spin. So. Right, the reason I'm just bunging everything up temporarily, especially the pushrod tubes, is I'm going to brush the rust off these two inside head bolts. They're in a terrible state, really rusty, and all that crap and crud in there. I want to get that out of the way before I put a socket on there and crack them loose. Obviously I don't want flakes of rust going down inside the engine, so I've just covered up the top of these valves. I know it's all coming off, it doesn't matter, but I don't want flakes of rust, especially going down the pushrod tubes and dropping into the cam chest, because although I'm going to open it up, I just don't need flakes of rust floating around inside the engine, because it's all bad. Anyway, let's get them cleaned up, drop the heads. Right, cylinder heads. Now it's pretty straightforward to take these off. You take the bolts off and you bump them clear, but it's important, I think critically important, to make sure that when you release the head bolts, they are released not only in sequence, but also evenly. So it's an eighth of a turn at a time and no more, and then do them in sequence. Then they'll come off nice and evenly and you won't warp them. But we all know that, don't we? Right, ready to pull the jugs off now. Quite important, as you pull that off, using both hands to hold the pot itself. As you pull it free and the piston drops out the bottom, it's important that on its conrod, it doesn't flop backwards and smack hard against the mouth of the engine casing itself, because that could chip it. So quite important, a bit of a three-handed job. Pop a cloth in there to protect it and wiggle each one off. Absolutely incredible. If you don't know this, just a quick kind of run through. When cylinder bores are made, there's a big machine bores the hole out down there, and then to take all the machining marks out, they use these little stones mounted on a machine, and these little stones rub around the inside, and they put scratches around the inside, like cross hatching it's referred to. And if you can still see the cross hatching marks, which is the manufacturing marks inside a cylinder bore, well, it's not worn, is it? It means that the action up and down of the piston and rings over the 20 years almost of this bike's life have not even been enough to rub out the factory cross hatching that it came with, which is just incredible. There are no scores or scuffs or scratch marks or scorch marks, nothing. That cylinder looks like it's done 1,000 miles or less. Have a quick look. Incredible. And the other pot's exactly the same as well. Absolutely like new in there. There's no ring marks, nothing from the piston, no up and down scratches whatsoever. All you've got is that fresh cross hatching from the factory. Perfect. I can't believe this. I can't believe my luck that I found a donor bike that's barely even run in after 20 years. Fantastic, because what it means is at the bottom end, the crank, the big ends and all that, well, they're fresh as a daisy. They'll be able to take all the power that I can throw at it without a problem. Fantastic. Job done. Wow, what a revelation. Who would have thought that after 14,000 miles you still get fresh cross-hatching inside the bores all the way down and not a single mark from the piston rings in nearly 20 years. Fantastic. This little engine is like new. It's not even run in yet. I'm so happy with that because it means that the bottom end is strong and tough and fresh and perfectly okay for putting a big hairy chested top end on. So talking of which, tomorrow I'm off to the Harley Davidson dealership. I'm going to talk to the guys there in the parts department about kits, options that I can bolt onto this, whether it's a 1200, a 1250. I definitely put some cams in it as well because there's no point in just putting pistons in. You might as well put some cams in it, and if I can afford it, we'll even look at cylinder heads as well. Maybe a whole Screaming Eagle top end, that'd be fantastic. But we've got to see if the budget will run to it. So that's my mission tomorrow. But for the next video, we'll open the cam chest, we'll take the cams out and have a look what they're like. I'm thinking they're going to be all right, but we just need to check anyway. And while we've got the cover off, there's a fab little mod for it that we're going to do as well to cut it down a bit, make it look a bit better. I'll see you then.